So the first question she has is, do you see oppression or have you seen oppression towards veterans with PTSD as a commanding officer?
I would say as a commander or just somebody in the military, we haven't really seen oppression. Like there's not nobody treats anybody differently. We know that the PTSD exists. I mean, we've all kind of experienced something overseas or deployments or something traumatic, and those people that have issues and that are still in the military, those are somewhat kept close hold with the command team and that individual soldier, and they're afforded the opportunity to seek counseling and go to the different mental health sessions to talk things out with different counselors and things like that. So I wouldn't say there is any oppression. So no, I think it's treated very fairly and professionally within the military community.
And they have programs and stuff that people are able to get in touch with when they're experiencing those things?
Yes. The Army makes themselves available and there's professionals. So it's not just a military person. There are trained professionals, both military and civilian programs that exist on military installations and outside military installations, and volunteers that afford or make themselves available to help veterans in need.
Okay. Some of these questions may seem kind of silly. I just don't know a lot. But so does that change when you come back from deployment? Like, are these programs when you are actively deployed, or when they come home? There's still ways they can seek out that kind of help?
Yes, there are a lot of different ways a veteran can seek help, and that's both while deployed and on CONUS, not deployed. Okay. There are online programs. There's different programs that exist. One of which is called Military One Source, where they're available at all times, and you can and those services range from financial counseling to PTSD type counseling. All different types of services are available to both soldiers that are deployed and stateside. And there's also things that if we see something as a commander that are command directed, and these soldiers are also free to go on their own, completely anonymous, where it's not necessarily tracked per se, and they can go completely anonymous. So there's a lot of different programs, a lot of different organizations that exist.
In your opinion, do you think that they take advantage of these resources?
I think there are some that do and some don't. Okay. I can't say overwhelmingly yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very personal choice. And those that have problems, that have come forward and are asking for help, the military leadership does everything that they can to get them services. But I think that's a personal choice of whether or not they want to do it.
Okay, how they want to do it. So the next question is, what is your professional opinion in regards to oppression towards veterans with PTSD? And I think what she's going for here is, you've expressed how there are a lot of great options that the military provides for y'all to get help and whatever you need. But I think she's talking about sort of social stigmas, so when they come back, if it's harder to find work, maybe just with the symptoms, things like if from your perspective, have seen anything like that with.
I personally haven't seen it. I'm sure that there may be some of it that exists. But the problem is PTSD is there's no signs per se.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't just walk around with a sign on your chest that says, "Hey, I have PTSD," and you may never even show outward symptoms, and it could just be something that's going on internally where you struggle with it, whether it be loud noises, whether trouble sleeping, and that kind of stuff may not even come forward unless that veteran or soldier says that. I think maybe a social stigma is that there may be some uneducated people in the topic that automatically assume that every veteran has PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
And that could potentially weigh in on whether or not he or she gets a job offer, because they don't want to run the risk of that this person is PTSD. And PTSD is not necessarily violent; it's just a memory sometimes.
So this kind of touches on what you just said, but do you believe that the general public is misinformed when it comes to this subject?
Maybe, but again, I think that there's a personal accountability of educating yourself, and so I think it does exist to some degree, but I don't think that problem exists unless you are somewhat unempathetic, if that's a word, towards a veteran and what they could have seen. And usually, my recommendation would be let that person come forward before you cast judgment, because it may not be anything that you can even fathom, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, do you believe that our current veterans will end up in a better economic state than those who fought in wars such as Vietnam? So I think what she's going for is, like, do you feel like when they come home, it is easier for them to sort of adapt and, like, get back into society, like, with their families and jobs, as opposed to like some of, how there's sort of more of a struggle with, like, returning back. I guess I don't want to say normal life, but...
I would say there's definitely an adjustment period. Now, as far as you mentioned economic, do I think that they're better equipped to get a job if they decide to leave the Army? I think that they acquire a unique set of skills that allows them to be agile and adaptive leaders that can innovate different types of things. I think there's a particular skill set that veterans have that allow them to be qualified for many different types of skills. As far as adjusting, there's definitely an adjustment period, because you go from 6 to 12 to 18 months of different types of operations, and like a common theme is you carry your weapon everywhere, and then when you turn that weapon in, when you come home from deployment, you typically start looking for it, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're used to that being on your side or in your hand for a long period of time. And there are those little adjustment things. And the families also have an adjustment period. It's not necessarily the veteran as well. So now you're a spouse, a husband and wife that's been at home taking care of business, paying the bills and doing all kinds of different things for the last year. And now all of a sudden you have this new person that's coming into your life. And sometimes that's a disruption on that side of the house too. So I think there's both the families and the soldier and veteran both have an adjustment to make. So it's a combined effort. But I think economically speaking, there's a particular skill set that those veterans have that can translate directly to different types of civilian opportunities.
Okay. And then one other thing I wanted to ask, I sort of thought about this while you were talking. What kind of options do individuals who are discharged have? So do they still have access, like if they're discharged from being in the military, but then they start to suffer sort of PTSD symptoms and all of that, do they still have access to the kind of resources?
They do.
The same?
They do. They do to some degree, I would say. So when soldiers leave the military, they go through a career program where it helps them learn it helps learn how to create different types of resumes, how to interview, different opportunities that are available, whether it's corporate, educational, all kinds of different things. It's kind of like a job fair on steroids, right? It's a very unique type of thing to leave the military and have these opportunities to go through different types of workshops that allow you to plan for that next journey in life. Medically speaking, the VA exists, so soldiers can go there, and depending on the type of health care that they may have, they also have access to the military installations if they have that privilege, and those services exist there as well. So yes, there are opportunities available for veterans as well.
Great. All right, so those are our before questions. And then, do you have the PowerPoint?
I